chicos, hoy en la clase vamos a repasar la introducción que hicimos ayer, de 1.3, las construcciones con C. So yesterday we briefly introduced the constructions used with say. Today I would like you to please add to your notes, and second period you guys did something different than fourth period, so please just add to your notes anything that is new information for you. So we talked about yesterday in class, so far this year we have seen say when we were talking about verbos reflexivos, okay? So far we have used say this year when we're talking about reflexive verbs. This was the unit that we did that was like ducharse, lavarse, despertarse, levantarse, sentarse. Okay, these were actions that you do, that one does to oneself. Okay, these were actions that one does to oneself. And remember, our reflexive pronouns were me, te, se, nos, o, se. Okay, and those reflexive verbs we conjugated based on who was doing the action. Okay, now completely separate from that, in this chapter we're going to introduce two new uses for say. Okay, this is completely separate than reflexive verbs. Okay, so the first use that we're going to look at today is the impersonal say. The impersonal say. And this was based off of the entry task that you saw yesterday. And on that entry task you saw phrases like no se puede usar los móviles en clase, or se habla el español en Cuba. Oops, en Cuba, perdona. Se necesitan cocineros, okay? With these impersonal constructions with say, the person who performs the action is unexpressed. They don't tell us who it is that's doing the action. Se necesitan cocineros, we don't know who is doing the action, okay? The person who's doing the action is unexpressed or unknown. And in English, we compare this to the passive voice. In English, this is when you guys say things like, if you want to snowboard, you definitely got to learn at Schweitzer. Okay, when you say that to somebody, you're not necessarily speaking to a person directly, okay, but instead you're making a recommendation to a whole group, okay? You and they are the expressions in English that you could compare these to. Okay, let's look at our three examples here. You'll notice that every one of these has a say in it, okay? And you'll notice from the verbs puede, habla, and necesitan that we are only going to use third-person verbs, okay? Third person, okay? You're only using third-person verbs. Now, if we don't know who the person doing the action is, then the way you're going to conjugate your verb is based on what comes after the verb, okay? Anytime, just like our verb gustar, you can use the singular form when you're telling me something, it's followed by an infinitive, like se puede usar los móviles, okay? Or se habla español. El español is a singular subject, okay? So you use the singular form of the verb. Here, this might be a sign that you could see in a restaurant where it says se necesitan cocineros. Cocineros, they are needed here. Cocineros, cooks are needed. Cooks are needed. And we used the third person plural because the word that followed it, or our subject that followed it, is plural. Okay, so that's how you're going to conjugate these impersonal expressions with say. So let's try just a couple more to make sure that you guys are understanding these. I went to a pizzeria in Spain once where it was prohibited to sing in the pizzeria. So let me see in your notes, it is prohibited to sing in the pizzeria. It is prohibited to sing in the pizzeria. Okay? Se prohíbe cantar. Se prohíbe cantar. And the reason that we used prohíbe, the singular, is because it was followed by an infinitivo. Okay? Se prohíbe cantar. Okay? How about one could buy medicines in a pharmacy? One could buy medicines in a pharmacy. How would you say that? Put that in your notes. One could buy medicines in a pharmacy. Okay. Se puede comprar las medicinas en la farmacia. Okay? Even though las medicinas here is plural, se puede is followed by an infinitive, and so you have to use the singular. Now, you could say, se compran medicinas en la farmacia. Se compran medicinas en la farmacia. And a couple people pointed out today in second period, you can almost think of reading these sentences backwards. Medicines, they are bought in the pharmacy. Okay? Let's see here if we are missing anything else from the book. So when we conjugate it, you are always, always, always going to be using the third person singular or the third person plural. Okay? Right now, we're going to pause the video, and I would like you guys to add a few more examples, ejemplos of your own. So, I'm going to give you a location, a lugar. Okay, I'm going to give you a lugar, and I want you guys to give me something that is done in this place. So, for example, if I gave you H&M. H&M is the lugar. Okay? What could you say about H&M? Se vende la ropa en H&M. Se vende la ropa en H&M. La escuela. Okay, la escuela. What could you tell me happens at the school? Maybe one would learn in the school, or perhaps one would attend class at school, or any expression that you can think of that is using se, and then you're going to pick either a third person singular or plural verb, and then tell me where you do that in la escuela. Okay, how about in la playa? In la playa. I want you to come up with an expression that uses se for in la playa, at the beach. At the beach. Okay, now we're going to go forwards to backwards. I'm going to give you some expressions and I want you to finish them. Se necesita blank in la clase. What is necessary in the class? Se necesitan blank in casa. So you come up with a few of your own examples here, and we'll share those in class tomorrow. Okay? Now, the other use for se, the third use for se, is se for eventos that are inesperados, okay? Unplanned events. So this is our third use, number 3, and we'll switch colors here. Okay? This is our third use of se that we're going to see in this one. For unplanned events. For unplanned events. Okay? Now, for unplanned events, we're going to start with a common list of verbs that could be used for these unplanned events. Okay? And we could have to fall. ¿Cómo se dice to fall? To fall. To fall is caer. Caer is to fall. We have dañar. Dañar is to damage. To damage something. We have olvidar. Olvidar is to forget. Perder. Perder is to lose. Quedar, one meaning, quedar can be to stay or to remain, to stay or to remain. And in this case, the book is going to use it as to leave behind. To leave behind. And I believe those are the most important ones that the book is going to be using. Okay? When we have these unplanned events, okay, when you're walking out in the parking lot and you drop your mobile and it breaks, okay, in Spanish, rather than having to go home and tell your mom, oh, Mom, I dropped my cell phone and it broke, I need a new one, in Spanish, you can use this say for unplanned events, and it kind of de-emphasizes the person who's doing the action. Instead of saying, hey, Mom, I dropped my phone and it broke, I need a new one, you're going to say, Mom, the phone, it dropped. And I was the poor victim of this, okay? It dropped on me, not meaning the phone fell on you, but it dropped and I was the poor person that was affected by this, okay? You're using this say when it was some kind of an accident, okay? It's some kind of an accident or an unplanned event. Something that you didn't mean. By using this, you're kind of indicating that you didn't mean for this to happen. And again, let's write down the person doing the action is de-emphasized. Is de-emphasized. Okay, the person who is doing the action is de-emphasized. So let's do a comparison. First of all, let's start with our formula. Say for unplanned events, we do have a lovely little formula here. Okay, you're going to start with the person or the thing that it happened to. A person that this unplanned event happened to. Okay, so you're going to start with a and either one person or a and two people. Okay? This a is just like in star, where it emphasizes to whom this happened. Okay, a. And then you're going to have your say. Next, you're going to have your say. Next, you're going to have your IOP. And again, for your IOPs are may, te, and lay, nos, os, and lace. Okay, so you're going to choose one of your IOPs. And remember, IOPs tell you to whom this happened, to whom this unplanned event happened. Okay, next is going to come your verbo, And your verbo, as we've discussed, is going to be in the third person. The third person. It's going to be a third person verb. Next, you're going to have your direct object. The direct object. And the direct object in this case is going to be what was unexpectedly the object, or what was unexpectedly forgotten, which would be what verb? Olvidar. What was unexpectedly dropped? What was unexpectedly lost? Okay, so this is an object. Then we have, our last column that we're going to have is the when or the where that this occurred. Okay, plus the lugar. Okay, the when or where this occurred. And what I'd like to do is go through a few examples here. Okay, let's go through a few examples. So So go ahead and draw yourself a little chart like this. And this chart is going to be exactly like the first quiz that we're going to take on this. Okay, the first quiz that you take on this is going to have a chart like this, and you're going to have to complete the chart with appropriate responses. So, for example, we could say, ami, and all of them are going to start with say next. Say. Now, if you have ami, what is the IOP that you're going to use? If you have ami, the IOP that you're going to use is may. Ami, say may. And I want you to say, we're going to keep practicing our preterite tense. Our preterite tense. So, ami, say may, and I want you to say forgot. Forgot. Now, because with these unplanned events, I don't conjugate the verb based on who is doing the action. I conjugate the verb based on the direct object, the thing that was dropped, lost, forgotten, damaged, or left behind. Okay? So I'm going to say, ami, say may, and the thing that you are going to forget is your backpack. Okay? La mochila. La mochila. And where did you forget it? How about in el coche? In the car. Now, we talked about you must use a third person. The verb to forget is olvidar. So in the preterite tense for AR verbs, maybe make yourself a little note here. For AR verbs, the third person is always going to end in o or aron. An ER or an IR verb is always going to end in io, with an acento sobre la o, or ieron. Okay? Ami, say may. So in this case, for forgot my backpack, are you going to use olvidó or olvidaron? And in this case, you're going to use olvidó. Olvidó. And that isn't because I'm one person. That's because what did we forget? The backpack. And there's only one backpack. Okay? So let's do another one. You lost. I want you to just go ahead and put this in the chart under the next line. I want you to say, you lost your shoes. Your shoes. Where did you lose your shoes? In the forest. You lost your shoes in the forest. And in the forest is going to be in el bosque. In el bosque. So take a moment right now and start left to right. And we're going to do you informal. Lost your shoes in the forest. You informal lost your shoes in the forest. So the person that this happened to, if it happened to you informal, you're going to start with a ti. A ti, say, te, and what is it that you lost? You lost your zapatos, los zapatos, your shoes. And perder is an ER verb, so it either has to end in io or ieron. Now, there's only one of you, but you're going to use the verb perdieron. Why? You're going to use perdieron because what you lost were your shoes. Your shoes. Okay? Let's do a couple more examples. Juana say Juana, say, I left the IOP and the verb blank, and I want you to say, Juana left her homework, and for homework I'm going to use la tarea, in the house of her friend, en la casa de su amiga. So how would you say, Juana, she left behind her homework in the house of her friend? A Juana se le quedó la tarea en la casa de su amiga. Now, think about this. If I had said, instead of tarea, if I had used the other word for homework, if I had used los deberes, what would you have to do to the verb quedar? It would have to be quedaron. And even though Juana is one person, she left behind the homework. Or, the way you can think about this, the way I always thought about it, is like when your mom comes home and sees a los niños, se les dañaron el florero anoche, last night. We'll do a win. Okay? The children, they damaged the florero, the flower vase, last night. Now, instead of coming home and mom says, hey, who broke the flower vase? What's going on? In English, the subject goes with the verb. Okay? In English, the subject goes with the verb. So you would say, the children, they broke the vase. And the responsibility is all on them. It's their fault. In Spanish, they can use this say to say, oh, Mom, the flower vase, it broke, it was damaged on us. It got damaged, and we were the poor victims. The children were the poor victims right here. Okay? Instead of, like in English, conjugating the verb to go with who's doing the action, los niños, in Spanish, you're conjugating the verb based on the direct object. Okay? Instead of telling your mom, oh, Mom, I broke the flower vase, you say, the flower vase, it broke. It just broke on poor me while I was there. Okay? Hopefully, if you have any preguntas right now, I would like you to take about 30 seconds. If you have any preguntas right now, things you're wondering, things that haven't been explained fully, take a moment right now and write it down. Write it down so that when I come back to class on Wednesday, you guys are ready to go. So take about 30 seconds and write down any remaining questions you might have. Take a moment and write down any remaining questions that you might have. Okay, now the next activity, the last thing that I want to see in your notes is going to be this chart. You guys are all going to recreate this chart into your notes and try to do it directly over it so they can see. There we go. You'll back up just a bit. There we go, perfect. Okay, and I will leave this tabla also for Mrs. Beckman to project if you guys can't see it on the video. But what I want you to do is you'll notice that in this chart there are several missing blanks in each of them. And you need to put an appropriate word in that blank or whatever, fill in what the missing information is. Okay? The verbs that we're using right now for these unplanned events, so right now this table is to practice unplanned events, our third use in our notes. Okay, the first one is the person or people that the action happened to. Then you have your say. Then you need to have an IOP, and remember the IOP in the third column here is going to agree with the person that it's happening to. Okay? Then you're going to have a verb, and I want you to use the preterite tense for this verb. And the options that you can have are going to be olvidar, perder, caer, and a couple new ones that you're going to have. At the very top, we're going to add romper. Romper is to break. Romper is to break. And romper you can use with a body part also. And then we also have torcer. Torcer, because when you twist your ankle, you don't do that to yourself on purpose. I twisted my ankle. You don't tell people I twisted my ankle. I physically bent down and tried to twist my own ankle. The ankle, it got twisted, and I was the person it happened to. Okay? So torcer is going to be another verb that you can use with unplanned events. You can also use olvidar or quedar. Olvidar, to forget, or quedar. Those are the only verbs that you're going to use right here. Then you have a direct object, and you've been provided with many direct objects, and if it's one of the ones that's blank, you need to put any direct object in there that would make sense. However, remember, this column has to agree with the conjugation of your verb. So if, for example, this one gives you perdió, it was lost, then what do you know about your object in this column? Your object in this column has to be singular also. It has to be singular. This one says perdieron, so what do you know about your object here? It needs to be plural, plural. Okay? And up here, olvidó is singular, third person singular, so this right here needs to be third person singular. If you are struggling with the vocabulary, I would suggest that not only you complete this chart, and I want to see this chart in your notes. I suggest that not only you complete this chart, but that you also do a little bit of translating, okay? You do a little translating. So that's the last thing that you're going to have in your notes. Okay? Now, I lied. There's one more thing you're going to have in your notes. This chart right here, and like I said, the first quiz that you take on this section is not going to be the book quiz. It's actually going to be a quiz with charts that look very similar to this, and you're going to have to fill in the missing information. This is going to be used to practice the second construction, the impersonal say, where in this case the person who performs the action is unexpressed. They don't tell you who it is that is doing the action. So on this table, what you need to do is you're going to make at least a few of these need to be made negative. And then, I'm taking a video right now. I'm recording for YouTube. So here, in this one, I would like you to make a few of them. I would like you to make a few of them negative, and then you're going to have a say in all of them. Then you're going to have a verb, and this time you're going to do your verb in the present tense. And again, you're only going to use third person. So all of your AR verbs will either end in a or on, and your ER verbs will end in a or in. Then you're going to have your direct object. And then the last part is where, when, or why the action takes place. So you could say, se habla portugués en Brasil. Or you could say, no se habla portugués en Japón. Okay? Either Portuguese, it is spoken in Brazil, or you could say it is not spoken somewhere. But you would have to change the place. So what I want you to do, again, is to fill out this chart. I want you to take a moment and fill out this chart with the missing information. Okay. And the very last thing that you're going to do today is have an opportunity to practice what you're learning. You're going to have an opportunity to practice what you're learning. And so in the packets that are on the counter, and you're not going to write on these, right, Miss Carson Anderson? You're not going to write on these packets because this is our class set. But you need to make sure and get a packet that says Lección Uno at the bottom. Lección Uno, otherwise you're going to have the wrong one. Okay, and on Lección Uno, when you go to section 1.3, section 1.3, Constructions with Say, you guys are going to do all of CP9 in class today. And I would like you to please do sections 4 and 5 from CP10. 4 and 5 from CP10. And again, these packets cannot be taken out of class, so you do need to work hard in class today and get those finished. Those should be finished and turned in along with your notes to Mrs. Beckman by the end of the period. Those should be finished with your notes to Mrs. Beckman by the end of the period. Okay, if you finish early today, you guys had entrevistas that you've been working on. And Kayla, you can follow me this way here. You guys were, last week, you guys had requested to do more oral activities. And so we did an interview where you guys have already had the time to prepare 6 questions. And some of these questions use the imperfect and some of them use the preterite. You guys got this and it was on a half sheet of paper that was white. Okay? And on the 7th one, you got to make up your own interview question. And your own interview question needed to use either the preterite or the imperfect. Remember, if the verb in the question is in the preterite, what form should you use to answer it? The preterite. So for number 1, ¿Cuál clase fue tu favorita el semestre pasado? Which class was your favorite the last semester or last semester, and why? You should have already answered this in the first person. La clase de matemáticas fue mi favorito el semestre pasado porque la señorita Tobler es muy buena profesora. Okay? So you need to give me an answer for the question and you need to tell me why. All of your questions so far have been answered in the first person. Today, in class, you're going to receive time and I want you to interview someone else in the class. Now, here's the condition of the partnerships. And chicos, I will see your partners. I do not want you to work with someone that you typically work with. And I know who you typically work with. So branch out. You could go meet somebody else new in the class today. Okay, you must work with somebody that you don't sit next to every day and you don't talk to every day. Okay, and I want you to interview them and you need to write down their answers on the back of your little half sheet. Okay, on the back of the half sheet, you're going to write down their answers to the questions. Now think about this. When I ask you a question, so here I am interviewing Miss Vidito, okay, and I asked Miss Vidito, ¿Cuál clase fue tu favorita el semestre pasado? So I'm asking her this in the to form. What was your favorite class? And she's going to answer, and she's going to say,
mi clase favorito era matemáticas.
Las matemáticas también, okay? And I'm also going to ask her, ¿por qué?
Porque mi maestro era el más inteligente.
Okay, porque su maestro era súper inteligente. Okay, now on the back side